I've always been a firm believer that some opinions are wrong, especially answers to open-ended questions in fiction. While creators of stories with open-ended questions can state all they want that a true answer doesn't exist or that it's up to the viewer, the truth is that 90% of these scenarios simply have too much evidence to be truly ambiguous, whether it be narrative implications, circumstantial evidence, or just hard evidence presented in the story itself. If you've seen almost any Omori content online and looked even the least bit into the narrative itself, you would know exactly what I'm talking about, with one answer to one question being objectively correct. And the ending of Stranger Things Season 5 is no different. Let's see. Dark themes? Check. Absurd ships? Check. Teen death? Check. Half insane fan base? Check. And finally, an open-ended question that has an obvious answer? Check. Since I'm no stranger to these things, I decided I'd go over why 11 is very much alive and why Mike's theory is the correct ending. Before we start off, we all know that Season 5 wasn't very good, but I'm not here to talk about the bloated cast and plot holes. I am not afraid to admit that I did enjoy watching Season 5 for the first time, and while I did notice all of its plot holes, I was invested when watching through. I was satisfied, except for the very end, with 11's fake-out death. I do not really understand why they didn't give 11 and Mike the happy ending that they very much deserved, considering the 5 seasons of perseverance that they've had to endure. They should have given some kind of sacrifice to a character that actually embodied self-sacrifice and deserved to get some kind of redemption. It is extremely unsatisfying, and it's also unsatisfying to the people who might have thought 11 deserved to make some sort of sacrifice, because it's not even confirmed if she died or not. But that's not what we're here for. We are here for a conclusive answer. You can agree with me or disagree, but these kinds of questions have objectively correct answers, and it's time to go over all the arguments that we have. To quickly summarize the theory, Mike proposes that the 11 we see inside the gate is actually a projection of 11 that Kali made to make sure she was presumed dead so she could escape from the military. 11 would then invisibly escape and disappear from Hawkins, going off somewhere without military presence while being presumed dead to the public eye. She would likely return or contact Mike after a very long time to ensure that nobody searches for her while she is still a large topic of interest. Now that we've got this, let's get into the meat and potatoes. Argument 1. 11 did not have a nosebleed in her sacrifice scene. This is by far the second biggest supporting piece of evidence in favor of this theory, and there's genuinely no explanation to disprove this. You will find out what the best piece of evidence is later. Every single time we've ever seen 11 use the Void in the series, she has always gotten a nosebleed afterwards. That is, except for this time. After contacting Mike through the Void and exiting it, we get a very clear close-up of 11 without a nosebleed. This is an immediate red flag and something that you would have noticed even in passing. I'm not sure if there's ever an instance of 11 not getting a nosebleed after using her powers, but if there are any scenes of that, it would likely make up 1% of the scenes she uses her powers in. But without fail, every scene of her using the Void results in a nosebleed. We've also seen she needs to be sitting down to use the Void while also needing quiet, which she didn't have in this scene. By now, you get the idea. Also, no, you can still see the tattoo on her arm. Billy has the tattoo in real life. People wrongfully assume that you can't see it in this scene. Argument 2. 11 would not have even been able to use the Void in the presence of the kryptonite machines. Your first reaction to this point would be to say that the emitters were not angled towards 11, so this wouldn't matter. But that's not exactly how they work. The effect of these emitters are specifically referred to as a horrible sound, meaning the machines would simply need to be turned on in order to work. They would not need to be angled towards anyone. Essentially, it's only the sound that causes the effects. Since there were 4 of them active, this means that there would be a lot of that noise at once. We even see how it works in the first scene showcasing these emitters, with 11 and Hopper at the wall. They're both hiding behind the sign, and the emitter is not even pointing towards 11, but they're still affecting her. Multiply that by 4 different emitters and you get a very large amount of sound, but looking at her projection in the gate, she is not phased at all. This is also pretty conclusive. This specific point is exactly how Mike comes up with the theory in the first place, after hearing the distortion on the speakers at the graduation party and realizing that she was not phased. Also, I want to point out that the illusion of 11 does not speak while she's still in the Upside Down, and you'd really think that she would have said goodbye to everyone out loud. She specifically contacted Mike and told him to tell everyone else, instead of just saying it out loud. Essentially, this means that 11 got far away enough to use the void and contact Mike. Pretty convincing if you ask me. Argument 3. You can literally see 11 run out of the truck past multiple soldiers when everyone is being captured. This is another almost conclusive point supporting this theory, and we aren't even halfway finished yet. If you watch this scene in slow motion, you can see on the left side that 11 immediately exits this truck and starts running on the opposite side of the gate. Kind reminder that the military has been relentlessly hunting 11 for months, so they know exactly what she looks like, so she would never in a million years be able to escape and sneak past them in plain sight like that. That is, of course, if she was made invisible by Kali. One of the soldiers even says that she was here 1 second but gone the next, or something along those lines. She would obviously struggle to even move in the presence of the emitters, but with all the shouting and chaos, it would likely be quiet enough to mask the groans of her pain. Let's not forget that she wouldn't even be able to move over to the gate fast enough to get in position because of the emitters, and we know that 11, exiting the truck, was the real one because we see her physically interacting with other people, which is something that Kali's illusions can't do. Oh yeah, here's some food for thought too. They literally filmed this same scene but made it more obvious. In the final shot, you can barely see 11 exit the truck, but in this version, it's so hard to miss. This is starting to not even be an open-ended question at this point. Argument 4. 11 did not budge when the Upside Down was collapsing. Hopefully you're starting to see just how much this theory has merit. When the wall had a hole for the first time, you can see that 11, Hopper, and Kali were all struggling to stay on their feet and had to move slowly to not get sucked into space. In the final scene, she just stands there. With all the intense pressure and force around her, it's hard to imagine that a 110-pound, 5'4" woman wouldn't go flying in this situation. I know that she wasn't close to the wall like she was earlier in the season, but given that the entire wall was broken instead of just a tiny hole, I think it's a fair trade-off. Once again, we know that Kali's illusions are unable to interact with the environment around her, so this fits in perfectly. Argument 5. This is similar to how Season 1 ended, and the Duffers hate killing off characters. This is more of a thematic reason, but just like in Omori, I believe these to be just as important as concrete arguments. We know how much the Duffer Brothers hate to kill off characters, so seeing the de facto main character being killed off is very out of character for them. If we look back at Season 1, we see the exact same thing. 11 makes a sacrifice and disappears, but nope, she's actually still alive. And also, her last words are, "Goodbye, Mike," just like in Season 1. There's beginning to be a pattern here. Let's also not forget that Hopper's fake-out death and Will's fake corpse fake-out death both use the same song in their episode's credits, and this episode uses the same one as well. Argument 6. This is not consistent with 11's character throughout the series. This is the last argument I have for this theory. 11 was never about self-sacrifice. 11's goal and desire was always to live a normal life, especially with Mike. That was always who she was as a character. The only sacrificial moment we ever see from 11 was back in Season 1, where she sacrifices herself to kill the Demogorgon. After that scene, we don't see any moments from her where she displays self-sacrifice in any way that would make her character revolve around it. She obviously puts her life at risk constantly throughout the series, but literally everyone does that, so that doesn't make them all about self-sacrifice. Once again, she has always wanted to live a normal life. If you don't believe me, let's compare her to an actual self-sacrifice character, Hopper. Hopper is self-sacrifice and always has been. The climax of Season 1 shows flashbacks to not being able to save his own daughter while saving the life of another person's child, something that he could not do for himself. In Season 3, his fake-out death was about as self-sacrificial as you can get for any death. That's literally what being a police officer is, self-sacrifice in its purest form. Comparing, quote, self-sacrifice the character to 11 makes 11 seem like the least sacrificial character of all time. That's because she isn't about self-sacrifice and never was. She has just always wanted to live. So, that's all my arguments. It's time to move on to the arguments against this theory. Wait a second. I said second strongest argument earlier, right? Well, I can't believe I almost forgot. Argument 7. Money, baby! Yep, you knew this was coming. Of course this is the strongest supporting evidence to this theory. Why would the Duffer Brothers ever miss out on an opportunity to make a spin-off show about Mike and 11 getting back together? Why would they box themselves out of making spin-off shows about Stranger Things? What would Stranger Things even be without 11? Without Millie Bobby Brown? Without their objective main character? They've already conferred that multiple spin-off shows are in the works. This is how the film industry works, people. Everyone wants to know what happens next, so why not set up a spin-off show about the biggest question of the final season of their show? They knew that people would be interested in this topic, and boy are they right. Nobody likes Season 5, but I guarantee you people will tune in for spin-offs to see if it gets any better, especially for the answer to questions like these. That's why they're not canonizing anything relating to the question. They want public interest peak before they definitively answer the question. And what better way to answer the question than a new show from Netflix to eat up? It may be a small season dedicated to mic searching, it may be a small season full of mini episodes explaining plot threads, or it may even be an entire movie dedicated to it. The search for 11, if you will. Regardless, most people want a closure above all else, and it will eventually come. Hell, I know exactly what they're planning, and I will very much willingly play right into their hand, because damn it, I want to know too. We all do. And it's very likely that we will know within the next half-decade. I'd even place money on it. They're already planning spin-offs, and this is just a slam dunk. So, good on you, Duffers. You can enjoy some revenue from the inevitable spin-off show that you will make regarding this question. Anyway, I'm going to get back to the point. This is about in-universe stuff. Now that I've provided all the supporting arguments to this theory, it's time to go over the counter-arguments to this theory. Counter-argument 1. Kali should have been dead. This is exactly how they want you to think when considering this, but it's very realistic that she was alive. Gunshot wounds to the abdomen have a mortality rate of about 10 to 20%, so it is very unlikely that she would have died from this alone. In the scene where she gets shot, we can see her struggling for breath before the camera cuts away. After the camera conveniently cuts back, we see her unmoving and dead. It's very likely that 11 and Kali discussed what to do while Hopper was away, and then Kali followed through just to make it more convincing. Remember, the whole goal behind this idea was for everyone to presume 11 as dead. Everyone presuming Kali is out of the picture is important for the plan to succeed. If Hopper had known about this plan, he would have likely immediately gone searching for her, which would have ruined the whole let's wait for government interest to die down before returning thing. It also doesn't make sense for her to have died this quickly either. We literally see that Karen got her throat slashed open and got disemboweled and was fine at the end of the season. Hopper literally got shot early in the season and just walked it off, so let's not forget what we're dealing with here. And no, the lab was not immediately blown up. If you look at the scene, the C4 explodes several floors above where Kali was injured, and the explosion from the exotic matter exploded outwards horizontally, not vertically. The lab is also in the very middle of the Upside Down, so the force from space would take the longest to reach the lab, and Kali, by extension. And in real time, Kali would have only needed to last between 20 to 40 minutes, as all the events between the separate groups of characters are all happening simultaneously. Counter-argument 2. Kali was too far away. Earlier in the season, we see Kali use her abilities on Dr. K and others while driving away from the military outpost when she's God knows how far away from the outpost itself. Aside from the void, the range of her powers is far greater than 11's, and she even seems to know when her illusions are being interacted with, as we see from the illusion disappearing when Dr. K interacts with it. We also know that her powers have grown from the last time we saw her, as she's able to totally silence the words of the children in Henry's mind, while Henry is fighting 11. And no, the sonic emitters would not affect the illusion. The sound waves only affect 11 and Kali when they themselves hear it, so the illusions themselves will be unaffected. Counter-argument 3. How would Kali know when to activate the illusion? This has a pretty straightforward answer. In the truck with all the other characters, you can see 11 looking to her left and dozing off for a moment, after smiling and interacting with everyone else. Notice that it is 11 in this truck, as all the other characters interact with her physically. This could mean that she is afraid of sacrificing herself, but it could just as easily mean that she briefly travels to the void to contact Kali to let her know to make her invisible soon. All she'd need to do was contact Kali for 1 second and then she would be invisible. And no, she wouldn't need to keep both illusions active at the same time. All 11 would need to do would be to contact Kali to make her invisible, escape to an area where she could use her powers, immediately contact Kali again to make her visible, also to activate the illusion inside the gate, and then she could contact Mike. This would not take much time at all, and we see that she would have plenty of time to do so when watching the scene. We know that 11 doesn't need a blindfold or static to travel to the void anymore, as we see her and Kali chatting in an open field without any of those two things. Well, these are the only counter-arguments that I've heard, as well as the only supporting arguments I could find, so feel free to comment your own opinions so I can add them to a pinned comment to make everything else more conclusive. You know, it's kind of ironic. I genuinely haven't felt this way about a story since I first experienced Omori back in 2023. That feeling of immersion, loving the characters, the story itself, and not being able to properly watch a video that's about anything other than the story I just experienced for multiple days, I hadn't felt like that in a long time. Barring Season 5's terrible ending and Season 3's mediocre plot and occasional bad character moments, the series as a whole was so enjoyable and immersive. Not to the level of Amori, but it was still a great week binging all the seasons of Stranger Things. I'm also getting a little deja vu here. Having a passion for a story, making a video on it to quell my creative desire, making arguments about open-ended questions, watching hyper-commercialization, delving into the fandom, and, most nostalgic of all, ridiculous ships, which have no place in the story. It's like I'm back home. Anyway, I just couldn't think straight about the series without having made a video on its biggest question, just like in Amori. So now that this video is done, I can rest easy knowing my opinion is out online, and just wait for the inevitable spin-off that I talked about earlier. Thank you for watching, and cheers to this video hitting the algorithm at just the right time.